Shalom, friends. It's Jeremy again, broadcasting from the mountains of Judea at the Arugot farm. It's really starting to sink in now. This is going to take a while. This process that the world is going through right now. And what day is it today? I think that we've broken a Guinness Book of World Records for that question being asked around the world at the same time. Every day is just merging into the next, and people are in their apartments, and just the days are like bleeding into each other. And what do we do with that? And so a lot of people right now are spending time just with regrets about the past, money they spent that they shouldn't have spent, decisions they could have made that they didn't make, things that they wanted to do but they just didn't get around to doing them. And other people, or maybe the same people, are really concerned about the future. And they're thinking, what is going to be with my business? Will I even have a business? What about my job? Where's money going to come from? What about the global economy? Are wars going to break out between nations? What's going to happen in the future? And in those two places, you can really get torn apart. And so the Tanach gives us beautiful insight into how to deal with really difficult situations. The heroes of the Bible had really challenging lives. And the Hebrews of the Hebrew Bible, they weren't perfect. They made mistakes. They paid for their mistakes very often. But their challenging lives are a guiding light for us because they teach us how to navigate our lives during challenging times. And I think that this is the greatest global upheaval since World War II. I think that's pretty fair to say, and we haven't even really started to see the effects of what this global lockdown is going to have on the world economy and on political structures and on leaderships and on things that were taken for granted that are no longer taken for granted. No one really has any idea how this is going to play out just yet. But this is definitely the biggest challenge that I see that's happening right now in our generation. And so it's a process that was obviously meant to happen. And so I want to turn to the Tanakh once again to just try to find a guiding light for what we're supposed to do in these challenging times. It's a really weird feeling like I'm really busy all the time in the weirdest way that I know how to be busy. It's like I'm not doing anything. I'm just in my home and my children are just here. I guess I'm working with them on schoolwork and I'm trying to it's just, I've never felt such a peculiar time where there's just nothing really happening. And I read a statistic, a study that was released by the Joshua Fund that said that 44% of Americans say this virus is a wake-up call to return to God. And a third believe we are living in what the Bible calls the last days. And so, of course, we're living in the last days, which really are the first days. And Israel is back in its land after 2,000 years. The Hebrew language has been revived, and it was almost like things were getting stuck. You know, really what happened was the entire world was about to divide the land of Israel in the Trump plan. And the right wing was excited in Israel, and the left wing was excited in Israel. Here we can divide the land of Israel, but we're going to rely on the Arabs that are not going to reject the peace plan, and we'll apply sovereignty on parts of Israel, and we'll move the place forward. The entire world got together, and in one united voice said, we will divide the land of Israel officially. And then the whole world came to a shuddering halt. And now the world is reorganizing itself. And I believe that, you know, the Zohar, the mystical writings of Judaism say that as the egg decays, the chicken grows. And so right now, the structures that were in place are falling apart. It's decaying, and that's very scary because it looks like things are really falling apart. But out of that, something new and beautiful will be born. And, you know, you can't help but love the news item that was just released today. On the Israeli news. The headline goes like this: Israel retools missile production line to mass produce ventilators. So these swords of war, retooling missile production to ventilators of life. swords into plowshares of productivity. I mean, that's pretty unbelievable. Israel is so fast and nimble on their feet. They've already figured out ways to make respirators, ad hoc. Somehow the Mossad has figured out ways to bring hundreds of thousands of masks to Israel. And now instead of making missiles, we're producing ventilators. And I think the fundamental claim of the Tanach is twofold. One is that this world, it has no division in it. There are not powers that rule the world. It's not that the economy runs the world, or that politics runs the world, or that money runs the world. All of the forces of the world, the natural order, everything is run by one guiding force, the oneness of God, because he is an expression of all of those forces. He expresses himself through all of those forces in the world. And so there is no division in him, and therefore all the things that are happening in the world come from him. And so with that understanding that God is one, the second claim of the Tanakh is that the oneness of this universe communicates with us. You can somehow intuit God's word. We can have revelation of the way to be in the world. And the same way that there's an IQ for intelligence, there's an SQ for spiritual intelligence. And Moses, the giver of the law, had the highest SQ recorded in human history, and he was literally able to channel down the ways to be in the world, the ways to act in the world, the 10 commandments of the fundamental moral fabric of reality itself. And so this universe that communicates with us, I can't tell you, and I don't think anyone can tell you, why this coronavirus is striking the entire world right now. But I think it is incumbent upon us to look at the universe and try to receive a communication, even though that communication is obviously beyond our understanding. But when you are training a dog, for example, a dog can never comprehend the thoughts that are in the human mind. Its mind is simply too simple. But it can understand punishment. It can understand reward. It can understand a warning. But it's like basic realities. We can receive communication. So this higher intelligence that is the intelligence of reality, that is creation itself, that is the creator himself, obviously we could never fathom the reasons that are interlinear and beyond time and space of why things are happening. But can we receive a communication of what's happening here? Missiles are now being turned into ventilators. The word for breath in Hebrew, which the whole world is short of breath now. Breath and soul are the same word in Hebrew. Breath is nishima, and soul is neshama. The world is like lacking soul now. We're lacking a breath of life. We're so sick. And now the war machines that we've been creating and designing and manufacturing to bring more death in the world, they're being converted to bring life into the world, to bring breath into the world, to bring spirit into the world. The pollution has gone down by tens of percents all around the world. The world is slowly healing itself from the destruction of man. And when I look at the virus, there's a concept in Judaism that's called midah keneged midah, measure for measure. Maybe in the Eastern religions they would call it a karma, that what you do in your life will ultimately measure out. You can't really get away with anything. And even if you do get away with it in this life, don't worry. This life doesn't end here. You can't really ever get away with anything. They will come measure for measure. And very often in trying to receive communications from the universe, we got to look at this measure for measure and try to analyze, is there a message for us? And I saw a video of how the coronavirus works. And the coronavirus enters into your body, and it goes into a living cell. It takes up all of the energy within that cell, multiplies within that cell, and then it destroys that cell. And all of the new little viruses that were made off the energy of that cell are spread into your body. And then more and more little viruses go into more and more cells. And that's how your body slowly but surely self-destructs if your immune system can't fight it off. And I'm just looking at, what the world has done to itself, or what humanity has done to the world. It's like we figured out how to maximize the utility of this planet. The gift of this planet. And we just were using its resources and cutting down trees. And only Israel, the only country in the world that started the millennia or the century with more trees in it than when we left. The only country in the world that's fighting desertification, that actually the desert is getting less and more green, is Israel. The Arugod farm is right at the edge of the desert, and we've planted 4,000 fruit trees and 3 vineyards here. I mean, if you look at the satellite pictures from 5, 6, 7 years ago, literally the landscape is totally different now. There are trees everywhere because the Jewish people, in our understanding of how we're meant to relate to the land itself has a personality, has an identity. We're to care for it. We're to let it rest once every 7 years, to let the land rest. Now, finally, it's like the entire earth is saying, let me rest. Get into your houses. Don't do anything. I need to rest. You've abused me enough. You've killed enough. No more wars. And we're just looking around, and to me, it's such an obvious, direct communication that we have to emerge from this with a new relationship with our planet, with a new relationship with each other, a new relationship between nations. That study that said that so many Americans, almost half, are saying they're feeling a calling now to turn back to God. What is that? That's so beautiful, because the only time that people really feel a chance to turn back to God is when they have alone time. And in the world today, we're so busy coming and going in traffic jams and deadlines and work and bosses and employees and goals to meet. The Jewish people, we were shepherds in the biblical times, just out with our sheep in the mountains, quiet, alone. We received the desert in Sinai. Why in the desert? It's just so quiet. There's nothing there. Midbar is desert. Midaber is to speak. If you really want to hear the universe speak to you, you need quiet. You need alone. You need a little bit of desert time, and the whole world is finding their own desert time in their own homes now. And in that time, they're soul searching, and they're saying, yeah, it's time to go back to God. What does that even mean, to return back to God? And so I guess the world will lift up the 10 Commandments as the moral structure of the universe, I hope. But I think there's something so much more that needs to be done now. And each person has their own cheshbon nefesh, their own soul calculations, their own soul searching that they need to do. But today I want to talk about another subject, and that's really getting practical, and that's really giving the gift that the prophets gave us, how to bring it into our lives. Because, like I said in the beginning, a lot of people are struggling with pasts and fears of the future, and what are they going to do with that? And so the psalm that the Jewish people sing every Passover, every holiday, every new month, is Hallel, praise. And one of the central, almost the climax of that prayer is Psalm 118. And I just put out a music video with a part of Psalm 118 just recently, maybe a couple of weeks ago. And it's an interesting psalm because on one hand, we're calling out to God to save us. It says, Ana Hashem Hoshiana. Please, God, save us. Please, God, help us be successful. And at the same time, we're praising God for the greatness of the day that we were saved. So it's almost like recognizing that even in our times of being saved, whether it be in the Independence Day War or being saved from Egypt, from Pharaoh, there's still an element that we always still need to be saved from our own situation. And then the psalm continues in my song that's in YouTube now. I will not die, for I shall live, and I will speak of the great deeds of God. It's like a song of the survivor. And then at the end of the psalm, right in verse 24, it says, Ze hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha bo. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be happy in it. And so I want to talk specifically about what that verse means for me today and how I live with that verse every morning. The day Mashiach comes, the day of the great revelation, the day of the final fixing, the day that finally, hopefully, will end this global lockdown, is called the Great Day in the Bible, Hayom HaGadol. And this verse here, that today is the day that the Lord has made, has become a part of my daily prayers. And it's on my music album, it's the second song, and it's the essence of the second song. And of course, just to mention, in this coronavirus pandemic, I'm giving my music album and my book, The Judean Art of Waking Up, out to whoever wants for free. I was selling it for $25 in order to pay for the production of the music and the cost of the book. But now in this situation, I just want to encourage as many people to pray as possible. And I know that finances now are very tight and people feel very insecure about the future. And so I'm just giving it away to whoever wants. So all you have to do to receive the music album and the book is email music@thelandofisrael.com, and you'll get it right back to you in your email. And so my rabbi in Yeshivat Otniel, one of my spiritual mentors, Rav Yaakov Nagen, every day he begins his classes declaring the date and that phrase. You know, he would be like, today is the 8th of Nisan, the 2nd of April. Zeh hayom asa Hashem nagila v'nismecha bo. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be happy in it. What is today's date? We should know that. Today is a day that never was and never will be again. Today is a new creation. Today is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Today is never going to come back. Today, right now, is all that we have. And so the past that we regret, it's gone forever, and it might as well not really exist. Wasting any time there is just not useful. And who knows what tomorrow will bring? Who knows what next month will bring? Mashiach might come this afternoon. Worrying about the future is just as useless. All we know for sure is that we have today. And so I think the goal is to make every day count, to make every day beautiful, to try to contain life in just one day compartments, that even if the days merge in together, I'm not really thinking in that way anymore. Someone just sent me a meme today. It's like, if you've lost count, today is March 97. Because like March just felt like it never ended. It was just like, what is going on here? But the mental exercise that I do every morning is I wake up and I say, my entire life, all that matters is today. Let's really focus on today and make today beautiful. You see, Hashem's essential name, Yud He and Vav He, it's a compilation of the words past, present, and future. You know, one thing we discover about the God of Israel in the Bible is that he is found in time, in sacred moments, in appointed times. More than any other time, the place to find Hashem is now. That's literally what his name means. It means happening right now. If we were to translate it, it would be becoming. It's almost like past, present, and future, but really the Yud and the He at the beginning are a little bit in the future sense. So it's like a little bit of the future of what's happening right now. So it's like Hashem is at this very exact moment. Oh, we just missed it. It's like we're happening right now. The interaction with God can literally, Rabbi Nachman says, the highest level of connectivity to God is just in a one-on-one conversation. Because in a one-on-one conversation, you're just present in that moment, in that conversation, and that is the meeting place with you and God. You know, yesterday has vanished and tomorrow doesn't exist. Focusing and worrying about tomorrow. Oy! The only thing we have control over is today. You know, it's like life is slipping away with incredible speed, and today is our greatest possession. The goal of this practice is to help us remain cognizant that all we have is the day that lies before us, and our singular meditative focus should be on making this day count. So whatever the hell happened yesterday I got into a big fight with my kids, especially my bigger ones. Today I woke up, I'm like, whatever that was, bye. I'm waking up to a new day. big smile on my face. All is forgotten. I just have today. When you think about survival and how the way that humanity has grown into being who we are today, sleep doesn't really make much sense. You're sort of defenseless. It's dangerous. I mean, it should have been somehow selectively minimized or eliminated. But apparently, Hashem wants us to re-experience the creation of each day, where there's a time where we're knocked out, and then we wake up again, and then in that moment, it's a gift that we can just literally start all over. And for me, the morning prayers are designed for us to recognize that we're starting again. It's like a meditative practice for every day. It's a muscle that needs to be flexed because you can become mentally strong. And now is a time that all of us, especially the parents among us, have to be mentally and emotionally strong. So we have to exercise our muscles. And this technique of just staying focused on today is really powerful. So, all of nature exists in a cycle of renewal. It's like we transition from a state of near death when we go to sleep to rejuvenated awakeness. It's like Tchiyat HaMetim, or the resurrection of the dead every morning. It's like night to day, winter to spring. Our natural state is one of renewal. And so every morning we've been given a new lease on life. And if we don't really focus our minds on staying present, it can always slip into the fears of the future, going back into the past. I once heard a beautiful quote that says, "Every day is a new life to a wise man." When Yitzchak dies, when Isaac dies, the Torah says that he passed away svayamim, full with days. It doesn't say that he was very old, that he had a lot of years, but it said that he had a lot of days. He lived a full life, a fulfilled life. How? By living the fullest each day, one day at a time. So every morning is an opportunity for goodness and growth that only this new day will bring. And so Rav Yaakov, who I mentioned before, has a beautiful insight into Psalm 34, verse 13. And it says, Mi ha'isha chafetz chaim, ohev yamim lir'ot tov. So this is usually translated, who is the wise man that desires life and loves days, that he may see good therein. But Rav Yaakov explains that the verse here is a question and then an answer. Who is the man who desires life? The one who loves every day and sees the good in them. Mi ha'isha chafetz chaim? Ohev yamim lir'ot tov. You gotta love every day. And so, I, on a personal note, am a guy that has been struck with anxiety in my life. I've had times in my life where it was just absolutely overwhelming. A year and a half ago, I sold my home and I left my community in Neve Daniel, and my brother was my next door neighbor. And then I moved my family to the deepest settlement in Judea without a fence in the middle of nowhere. People would have said that maybe 2 months ago that I might be in the most dangerous place in the world, and sort of it flipped upside down now that maybe I might be in the safest place in the world now because I'm just so removed from everyone. I don't know. But it was the only way to accomplish our dreams, to build the Arugot farm. And, I've served in the military in 3 wars. Moving out here was by far the hardest thing that I've ever done. By far. I suffered a lot. Selling my home was a massive financial blow. Moving to the mountain was a radical change of lifestyle. There were more challenges that I'd ever experienced. We were living alone, responsible for my wife and 6 kids under the threat of Islamic terrorism. The left-wing Israeli organizations funded by Europe sued us in the Supreme Court. The Obama administrations, the United Nations were working tirelessly to expel us. It was just a lot. I worried a lot. Was this move going to rip my family apart? How will my children adjust? Will everything be destroyed in the Supreme Court? All of what I've built. What about my marriage? What about our savings? What about our financial future? Oh, well, I just had enough courage and faith to burn my bridges behind me and throw my entire life into this monumental project. It says you should love the Lord your God with all your faith and all your heart and all your soul. And with all of your, usually it's translated as might. Me'odecha sometimes is translated as possessions. But me'od means with all of your very. Just with everything you have and more. It just means to, sometimes in life, you just got to give it your all. And I think right now everyone is kind of being pushed to a certain limit now, that they have to give it their all. Their marriage is on 24/7. Their parenting is on 24/7. Their business is on 24/7. There's no in and out. There's no dividing now. Everything is together. And so it's another way of just trying to figure out how to serve God with everything we got. And so when I just made this move, it was just so hard. I was up at night doing guard duty around my house, up in the daytime. It was just insane. And the only meditation that helped me was going one day at a time. I just felt like when I practiced it, my concerns dissolved into the present. When I was just doing what I needed to do, and that's all that I could do is at that time, then I'm doing what I'm doing. And I just had to force myself to only think about the tasks of the day and what was in the sphere of my influence today and what I was doing right now. And no matter what the situation in life, we can only affect the day in which we live. And so sometimes, people think prayer is sometimes praying for God to change our situation. But I've said it before, prayer is more about changing ourselves than changing God. It's really about orienting ourselves towards what He is doing in the world. Because His will be done in our lives, in the world's life. And so orienting ourselves towards His will is the best way to be in flow with the blessings of this universe. And orienting ourselves to focus on the present day at hand is the most effective way to block our regrets of the past and the worries of the future. I think Abraham Joshua Heschel once said that we stand at every moment at a meeting point of two eternities, the vast past that has existed since the beginning of time and the future that will exist for the rest of eternity. No one can possibly live in either one of those eternities. Trying to do so will literally destroy our bodies and our minds. And so during the Holocaust, when rumors that the Allied forces were approaching and the possibility of liberation arose, the survival rate increased because people were hopeful. They said, okay, we can hold on. When people heard that the Allies' progress was slowed and that they were losing the battle, more people gave up on life and committed suicide. Rabbi Kalanimus Kalman Shapira, the Eish Kodesh, the Holy Fire, the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto, he said like this: if we knew that tomorrow we would be saved, we would have the strength to persevere through any challenge. It is in despair of the future that weakens our resolve. Anyone can do this kind of work. Anyone can do anything for just one day. You can endure anything if you stay focusedly entirely on that one day. Anyone can live through any hardships. Anyone can live through any stress. But just living from sundown to sunset, that's the key. And so not only is it a good key to deal with anxiety about not focusing on the future and not regretting the past, but just doing what we can do, also just compartmentalizing our life now as days, waking up and just really imagining, what do I want today to look like? Taking time at the beginning of the day and try to think of yourself. What kind of father do you want to be today? What do you want to learn with your children today? What kind of husband do you want to be today? What kind of wife do you want to be today? And then just focusing on today and making each day its own work of art, making each day really a masterpiece, and just focusing on each day because that's all we got. A few years ago, Arya Bramwitz, when I was really, really struggling, this is years ago, he said that there is a technology that he has developed in the spiritual realm. Maybe technology isn't the right word. Maybe it's a system is maybe a good idea. Well, let me tell you what the idea is, and then we can define it later. But he said that there's a contradiction in faith and in emunah That if I have faith that God is going to take care of things, then I really shouldn't act. I'll just wait for God to provide for me. And if I'm so busy acting and working so hard, then, well, do I have faith? But am I really not supposed to work? I mean, what is the balance between emunah, faith, and hishtadlut, and my actions in the world? What is meant to be the right balance? How do I know that I'm not having too much faith? And how do I know that I'm not having too much action? It seems like it's a real tricky question if you really think about it. And so he made a diagram, and he said that you are supposed to do as much as you possibly can until you start feeling emotionally imbalanced. As soon as you start feeling bad feelings, anxiety, stress, that means you're pushing too hard, and then you have to let go. Meaning you work as hard as you can, but as soon as you're working, you're not doing it, and you're trying more, and you got to do it, you got to go, and the anxious, that means you're trying too hard. So you do as much as you possibly can until you start feeling your emotional guidance system, the internal GPS system that we have, your happiness is getting off kilter. It means you're doing too much. It means you really have to let go and let God. And so in today's world, there's so many people now that literally they don't have anything to do. Their jobs are on hold now because they work in the mall and the mall is shut. What are they supposed to do now? And so in that sort of XY diagram chart, well, that means that it's really time to rely on faith. Because if you can act, then of course you should do everything you can to prepare for this global pandemic. Prepare your family, prepare in any way that you can, prepare financially, prepare emotionally, prepare with food, prepare in any way that you can that you see fit, of course. But when you start realizing, man, there's really nothing that I can do now. It's totally out of my hands. I don't know where to turn. I got nothing to do. I'm in my house now. Well, that's really when it's time to let go and let God and really enter into prayer. Not that you change the scenario, but rather that you try to align yourself with His will. And then in that place, you will find your place in the world. And so today is the day that the Lord has made. Let us be happy and rejoice in it. Every single day, let's try to make the best of it. And with what we can, we should do. And if we can't, that really is now almost a new bandwidth that we've been given to really seek out God and to seek out what our purpose is in this world. What is He calling us to do? When we finally get out of this, who do we want to be? What do we want to contribute to the world? How do we want to change the world? And so, thank you all so much for always giving me your kind support and your emails and your WhatsApps. If you would like to join the WhatsApp distribution list, just send me a WhatsApp with your name. It might take some time, but I eventually get around to doing it. And so my WhatsApp number is plus 972 544 611 843. And if you want the music album and the ebook, The Judean Art to Waking Up, The Judean Art to Waking Up, the whole world is slowly waking up. So just email music@thelandofisrael.com and you'll get an automatic copy of the album and the ebook sent directly to your email. So stay safe, stay inside, and stay tuned, my friends. Shalom from the mountains of Judea at the Arugot Farm.
This week on Rejuvenation with Eve Harrow, an exclusive interview with Mayor of Efrat, Oded Ravivi, on how community is pulling together in times of crisis.
Whatever will work will be the cure, will be the major aid to assist us through this challenging time. Come with new ideas and hope that one of them will be the breaking solution. We need to strengthen for the day after, and please God will come out of it stronger and healthier.
For the full interview, click on Rejuvenation with Eve Harrow on the Land of Israel Network at the Land